Is it possible to change things? Can I rise above the flood? Will the process cleanse my soul? Or is it always in the blood?
Hey guys, I want to welcome everybody back to the In the Blood podcast. Today is Friday, April 18th, I think.
Yep.
My name is AC, and with me, as always, is the cheese whiz to my celery, Jason the Dice Man Moore.
Howdy. Howdy. Sorry.
So today is a bit of an interesting one because normally you and I we spend about 3 or 4 minutes talking about, okay, what are we going to chat about today?
Mhm.
Today, I think we spent as much time talking about what we're going to talk about as we're probably going to spend recording the
What we're
actual
talking about.
conversation.
Yeah. I'm just glad you made it so I'm the one with personality.
Now
You call me Cheese Whiz.
I'm going to have that song stuck in my head. I won't sing it because I don't want to get a copyright strike on YouTube. But
You're welcome.
yeah, I don't know. Like a couple of weeks ago on the Call Me Tony podcast, I talked about how I was abandoning the middle ground, and basically that whole conversation was centered around the idea that for many, many years I had firmly believed and I had shared the message in front of audiences large and small that all of us as people have more in common than we have in conflict, and that no matter how different another person appears on the surface, there's always going to be that common ground that we can find. And that if we focus on that, we can get along with somebody who is apparently opposed to everything that we value. But recently, I've been calling that into question. I didn't realize until we started chatting this morning that you found yourself in a similar place.
Opposite position, but similar circumstance in my head. Yeah. Because I used to be the one that would sit down, dig in my heels, and argue about it until I proved my damn point. Now I find myself sitting back and saying, it's my point. If you don't want to hear it, not a problem.
And it's kind of interesting because, like, whereas before it's like, well, I'm not going to argue. I'd rather get to know you and then figure out like how we can be friends. Now I'm just thinking, if you're looking to tear down everything I value and everyone I value, then fuck you. It's on.
Mhm.
And I'm not willing to be neutral or complacent. I'm not willing to be friends. I'm happy to make an enemy and argue that enemy into the ground because my passion has been awakened. And on some level, I've been convinced that by what's playing out in the political theater, specifically in the US right now, I've been convinced that this is not the time to explore the common ground. This is the time to fight for what I believe to be right.
Mhm. Yep. Whereas, and like I just said earlier, I'm not so much into the arguing side of it, but something you and I are on the same page now is, F you. I don't need you as a friend. I have no interest in building a relationship around something that's going to cause conflict throughout a relationship. None at all. And I got like 1,800 other reasons to fight people physically. So I'm not going to let that be one because 90% of the time when I have those kind of disagreements, my partner's with me and she doesn't like violence. So
There's always some reason to hold back, eh?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, for anybody who's like wondering why we're suddenly talking about politics, is like the whole idea today is not to fully immerse ourselves in what's happening in politics, but I think that if you think about that old-timey social rule, right? Like where there's certain things you're not supposed to discuss at the supper table, like you're not supposed to talk about religion, you're not supposed to talk about abortion for some reason, which is a delicious topic. You're
Well,
not supposed to
depends if
talk
you cook it
about,
medium rare or not.
hey, you're not supposed to talk about politics, but it just, I think like politics these days, they become such a dominant presence in our headspace where it's like even people who normally don't want to think about or talk about politics are just sort of like stuck wondering, okay, like how do I make sense of this? And even when it's not a case of like people like passionately expressing their views, it could just be a case of passionately trying to make sense of things they don't and can't and shouldn't understand with their friends. You know,
Right.
like Americans, we're looking at you. What the fuck?
And see, I think that's where the most juice from the topic we've chosen to talk about is going to come from, because now we are more divided than ever. Because there are Americans dissing Canadians, Canadians dissing Americans, but there's also that big percentage, or equal percentage, I'll say, that are supporting each other, Canadians to Americans, Americans to Canadians. So there's definitely been a relationship divide created because of politics, whether it be American or Canadian, because both are absolutely screwed right now. They're
Yeah,
both
and we're coming into our own election in a week or two, so we
mhm,
got our own stuff going on here.
right, and both political systems are causing disruptions in personal relationships.
Yeah.
I got some friends online who are American that they won't talk to me right now because I'm a Canadian. I'm not buying American products a lot. I'm not adversely staying away from them in the sense that, like, if I need something and it happens to be American made, I'm going to buy it because I still want to support people in America that work hard, do their best to put the food on the table, that kind of stuff. But the other side of me that is kind of staying away from American products is because I don't agree with the political regime.
Yeah, I kind of like the way you introduced all this stuff about like it sounds like there's like a lot of things popcorning around in your head right now. I mean, there's some positive, there's some negative, there's some in between. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's like the lines, all of the lines have been redrawn.
Mm-hmm. And
And my
crossed.
experience has been very similar to yours, like with American friends, and I've got quite a few of them. There are those Americans who are just, like, oh, we love you because you're Canadian. We're jealous of the fact that you're Canadian. How do I be Canadian? And there's other ones that are just like, you know what? Shut up because you're Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
How
Fuck you
dare you
because you're
not buy
Canadian.
American products? Because unlike you, I am deliberately avoiding American products. And that's just my way of feeling like I'm accomplishing something. I'm probably not accomplishing it, like the beneficial things that I've convinced myself I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
but it feels productive.
Well, and the other thing that you got to look at is there's also a collective consolement to what you're doing because you're not the only one doing it. So your little bit is still contributing.
No, yeah, I guess. Well, whether it's helping or not, I feel like I'm part of a movement, and
Yeah.
that I guess all kind of ties into the overarching theme of the show, which is all about like how, if at all, are we getting along with people on a platonic level? I
Right.
mean, and these platonic relationships, I mean, tariff wars and trade relationships to the side ish, it's these platonic relationships that seem to be carrying the brunt of all of this political maneuvering.
Right. Yeah. It's hurting people on both sides of the fence. And because of it, people are hurting people on both sides of the fence because of it. So, I think the best thing to do right now is like really sit back and think about like why, because our politics sucks, why are we hurting each other? Like, isn't that really like if politics are shit, isn't that really the last thing we want to do? Like a little bit of understanding on the American side. Hey, you know what? I understand why you're not buying my product. The tariffs and the upcharges, and it's taking more money out of your pocket. But on the same respect, then there's also the other side that says, Well, maybe we should buy certain things because they're from a different demographic of people who are not billionaires putting booze on the shelf. They are hardworking people that are struggling to go to day to day.
Well, see, I've been kind of a little bit lost in that line of questioning myself, but I mean, what the closest comparison I can bring up, and I don't know if this helps answer the questions or not, but I mean, it just helps frame things a little bit more clearly for me, anyways. Is like if I'm looking at a religious, I can't say a religious organization. If I'm looking at a religion, I'm gonna like pick on Christianity just because that's the dominant religion in our society.
Fair enough.
But if I'm gonna look at a Christian extremist, like something along the lines of like Westboro Baptist, with like they're holding the signs, basically talking about how God hates everybody that they also hate. Yes, they identify as Christians, and they are Christians. But then there's like somebody like my grandmother, who's no longer with us, but I mean, when she was alive, I mean, she would show up to church on a Sunday. She would say her prayers. She would bake casseroles for people that were going through stuff or who were underprivileged. She would donate money to the poor. She was also a Christian. Now, it would have been unfair on some level to say, well, because these extremists exist, I hate Christianity. I hate all Christians.
Right.
I think like when we're looking Canadians versus Americans, I mean, like really what we're doing is we're trying to define the entirety of a civilization by its extremists, which unlike with religion where it's like you choose the label, it's like you can't help unless you're an immigrant, of course, but like if you're assuming you're naturally born American, you didn't ask to be American, you can't help for being American. You're not going out of your way to like fuck me over as a Canadian by showing up to work wherever you work, right?
Right.
Like you welding something isn't affecting my life in any way. Me doing this podcast isn't raising your price of eggs, but we're treating each other as though this is exactly how it works while ignoring the real villains in the game that are trying to stir up conflict between us as a distraction from what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you got the extremists who are on both sides of the fence. People who are megas, who are 100% behind Trump, and then you have the other people who are anti-megas, who are like ridiculously against on both sides of the fence. We have it with our liberals, conservatives, and NDP because we got a three-party tier. But we have as much division on this side, and rather than put, I'm not going to say put politics aside because you can't do that in today's society,
Right.
but still put a bit of a separation there. So, so what if you disagree politically? Human beings are still human beings. If you shoot somebody in the head, one person's going to die, one person's going to go to jail for murder. Doesn't matter what you believe. So, on some level, people have to get a little bit of common sense and start to realize that though our political agendas are different, nothing else really is. It's and in my head, it compares very much to racism. You
Well,
got to
I
be
would think it's like a close cousin to racism because I mean, we are developing feelings about people based on where they're from.
right, or what they believe,
Hmm.
and there has to be some way to get a hold of who we are as individuals, and like I said, kind of put aside your political differences and just start to. These are hard times. Start to help somebody. Try to give somebody that little bit more because a lot of people are going without because they can't change anything because too many people are opposed or for one or the other.
See, like on some level, I want to agree with the things you're saying, but on another level, I'm stuck in this mindset where it's like, you know what? I don't know how to pull together right now without feeling like I'm prostituting my personal values. Now,
Mhm.
I'm not saying that I would necessarily be doing that, but it feels like I would be doing that. And in this like confused headspace, it's like I feel like if I don't know what uh, or if I can't identify a well-defined right or a well-defined wrong, I feel like I want to default to a position of overcautious, almost paranoia as far as all this stuff is concerned. And I don't know that that's healthy, but this is where I land.
Mhm. And in your statement right there, just help me learn something, because 4 years ago, your logical mind would not have let your feels differentiate. Whereas now, 90% of the population, I think, like people who used to really feel have gone logical, and people who are really logical have gone feels. Because the more I listen to what people are saying, the more it puts itself out there. Friends that I know that were like totally emotional, of course, and I'm not saying everybody across the board, because there are still people like my partner who live with their emotions rather than logic. But for the most part, there's been that shift that people have created in their head. Well, I really have to adjust my thinking because of the way the economic system is or the political system is, one of the two. So I'm going to flip my beliefs on their ass and start thinking a different way. And
No,
I'm
and
not saying your beliefs have changed, but the way you think about them have, because you're a lot more emotional now. You think a
no,
lot
and
more with your feels.
I think that's a great observation, and it does kind of like a weird way make sense because I've always looked for the internal solution. I think a lot of other people have like who have traditionally looked to impact society and like how do I like affect all the big things that are happening around me have realized that what, I've got very very little influence over these big things. I just need to figure out how to get comfortable rolling with it.
Yep.
I need to reconcile my headspace with my surroundings. That's what I've always done. I think that's what I continue to do because I can't reconcile a logical mindset with the ridiculousness that surrounds me. It's an
Mm-hmm.
emotional climate out there. And I feel like in order to navigate it to some degree, I've got to become a more emotional person. So, I mean, as you've accurately pointed out, I have become more emotional, but there is a logic that was like driving the shift.
Mm-hmm. Well, and with that, I don't think the inside space can properly cohesively work with the outside space because the logic in our political structures has gone. It is no longer there. It's no longer this is logically right for people in Canada, this is logically right for people in America. Both sides of the border and all five, the two political structures in the States and the three in Canada, have gone away from logic. So that shift had to happen in order to properly acclimate to the new political structures. If logic is gone, well, where do you fall to?
No, it's sort of an interesting line of thinking too, because I mean, like I've been thinking so much about like how things don't compute. Like every time I hear something on like the news, it's like, oh, does not compute, does not compute. You saying how like how people are moving away from logic, how logic is gone, that would explain why things don't compute. Because I think in the past we've had a lot of experiences with people who have deprioritized logic and instead prioritized emotion. But it's not like a person who prioritizes emotion is necessarily devoid of logic
Right.
or is necessarily like in denial of logic. But these days, especially when we get politically charged as individuals,
Mm-hmm.
I do think that we become not just like in a position where we've abandoned the logic, When I say we, I mean like as a collective whole, not us as individuals.
Right.
But it just seems like the majority of people appear to be hostile to the logic. I mean, if you look at one of the little elements of the political shit show, I can't even say theater right now. 2 years ago, you had all the liberals saying, "Oh, you got to buy Teslas. Like EVs are the way of the future," and the conservatives were like, "Yeah, fuck those electric cars. We need to burn as much gasoline as possible."
But we'll tax you for it.
And now it's like if you drive a Tesla, the liberals will roast you alive. Like they'll key your car.
Mhm.
And the conservatives are like, "Oh no, no, no. The Elon man, he good. We love those EVs." Like,
Well,
where's the logic in either side of that?
mhm. Yeah, flip logic. It's like the old SCSI drive. It's fuzzy logic.
So I don't know where your head's at. I feel like I'm so impassioned. I'm getting a little lost in the weeds here. Are you able to bring us back on track here?
Well, am I?
That's a lot of pressure to put on you.
Well, I think bringing it back from a heavy politicized conversation that we were just having to, again, disassociating ourselves with politics to a point. I don't think, like the separation of church and state. I think there should be a separation between politics and personal relationships. I know there isn't, and I know it sounds like an absurd statement to put out there. But the more we let our political beliefs influence our relationships, the less relationships we'll have, or we will have segregated relationships, little botches all over the place because like-minded people are going to be few and far between because there are so many radically different thoughts when it comes to liberals, NDP, conservative, on both sides of the table or on both sides of the border. How do we get away from making enemies of our friends because of the way we have our political alliation?
All I know is that I'm used to being able to make sense of my own headspace and, like think about things that I've learned in the past that have benefited me. Like when Christopher Hitchens had suggested that every day people read something that they disagree with as a vehicle to broaden their mind. I started doing that and my life changed dramatically for the better.
Mhm.
All those times where I encouraged people to follow my example in exploring and prioritizing the common ground, that definitely changed my life for the better. I'm now at a place, taking it back to where we started at the beginning of this conversation, where I don't know if the things that have served me in the past will serve me in the present. I feel like I'm stuck between two things that like they're not going to live together. I mean, I can't both live in the common ground and reject the common ground. I've got to basically pick a side. I can't like sit there with like the fence post up my ass. Like,
Pick a side. Yeah.
yeah, it's like it's time to make a decision.
Mhm.
And the decisions that I've been leaning towards, they've been pushing me into this kind of like um isolated socialization in a sense that you're describing, where it's like, okay, so your friendship portfolio can't be as diverse as maybe it was like 6 months or a year ago.
Right.
Now you're interacting with the same kind of people, the ones who like, not necessarily that you're looking for a circle that's not going to challenge you, but it's like you're just looking for people that don't piss you off,
Mhm.
people that are comfortable to be around. But even that drags me back to something my father used to say, which is that if you live in a bubble, sooner or later you're going to run out of air. And I'm finding myself more and more in that bubble, and I'm not sure what to do with the decreasing oxygen supply.
So, okay, with that being said, how many these strained relationships that we touched on earlier, how many of these strained relationships do you think are put there because of your beliefs? How many do you think are put there because of the other person's beliefs? And what can we do? What do we have to change, do you think, to rectify those so that whatever our political beliefs are, we can rectify it, or not rectify, we can right the ship in our political in our relationships, in our personal relationships.
For the first time in my life, I honestly don't know. Because I think that like we've become very polarized as a society.
Mhm.
And part of that polarization is, like to one of your questions, you said like, is it because of something that we believe? Is it something that they believe that's like the source of the stress? I think the answer is yes to that question. Because when we look at each other, I mean, we're sort of looking at each other in the mirror in a sense, because it's like if I'm coming nose to nose with a conservative and they're coming nose to nose with me as an ultra liberal, I mean, what's happening is we're looking at each other and we're both saying the same thing. You are trying to destroy everything that I value. You oppose everything I love. You want to disrupt my way of living. You want to disrespect my values. You are not willing to listen to me. You won't bend. You won't compromise. You are the problem.
Mhm.
Which one of us is wrong?
Man, we're both shouting it from the treetops.
And we both feel morally justified.
Mhm.
Now, I can sit here and smugly say I'm right and they're wrong, and here are my reasons why. When they do the same thing, I tell them to shut the fuck up and I would dismiss them,
Mhm.
just like they do to me. I don't know what to do with this.
Ever since you just made that statement, I believed. Remember, you just made that statement. So um, we have an obligation, I think, to put the stinking thinking aside. The you're ruining everything. You're this. You're that. You're taking this away. You're taking that away. We got to really stop putting that on each other. Because just because your beliefs are different than mine doesn't mean we're not going to buy the same loaf of bread when we go to the grocery store. We may like different cars, but we'll still meet side by side on the racetrack. So, what's different with, you may be a Ford guy and I may be a Chevy guy, but on race day, our cars are both really cool and we're both racing down the racetrack. Or our both cars both totally suck, but we're going to try anyways. And we're going to have shake hands and have fun with it anyways. Why can't that mindset apply in the political arena too? Like,
I
do you think there's
think,
something in our society that's tearing us down and stopping us from doing that?
yes. And I like that you actually brought up the Ford and Chevy thing, because it sort of sparked something in my mind that I think is really like feeding into the conflict here. It's the marginalized third party. So, like in the Ford versus Chevy analogy you're using, it's like, okay, maybe I like Ford and you like Chevy. Cool. We can race our cars. We can enjoy the fact that we're both car guys who are both into car shit. Cool. If you, as a Chevy guy, start telling me that Dodge shouldn't exist, and I'm like, I'm not a Dodge person. I don't really understand why people like Dodge. I don't personally drive one, but I think Dodge people have a right to show up at the track.
Mhm.
And even if they don't race, They have a right to drive down the road. They have a right to have a Dodge in their garage. They have a right to like have a Dodge poster on their wall. They have a right to really, really love their fucking Dodge. You and me don't have to understand it. I'm willing to let the Dodge exist, but if you're going to tell me the Dodge has to like stop existing, I got a problem with that. You know,
Mhm.
like the Dodge in the political arena is maybe it's immigrants, maybe it's people from the rainbow community, maybe it's, I don't know,
Liberals.
and anybody
Yeah.
who's been traditionally pushed to the side.
Yep.
And I think that this is where like maybe I feel, I don't know whether it's justified or not, that's not for me to decide,
But you feel justified.
but I feel justified in saying, you know what, you're wrong because you're trying to squash somebody who isn't affecting your life in any way. That's the fundamental difference between, let's say, liberal and conservative. I'm not going to say like who the good guys or the bad guys are. I think everybody can probably figure out for themselves where I land there. But I'm not going to get gay married. I'm not trans. I don't deal with a lot of this stuff. I don't even fully understand what it would be like to feel trapped in the wrong body. I haven't had any gender affirming surgery. I don't need one. As far as abortion is concerned, my wife's had a hysterectomy. Like, we're not going to need abortion services or any form of birth control really in the foreseeable future.
Mhm.
These are all things that don't directly land in my lap, but that matter to me because I don't want to see anybody else deprived of opportunities that they need.
100% agree.
And I think that's ultimately what I'm fighting for. It's not really so much like looking across the political divide at somebody else who's also looking to be happy, healthy, well adjusted. Yes, we've got that in common for sure. We're gonna both, like you say, we're gonna eat the same loaf of bread. Yeah. We both have our signature chili recipe. Yeah. We both like doing people stuff.
Right.
The major key difference is I want everybody to be able to do people stuff, and you want, not you, but like the other people, the conservative side of the fence. It's like they want most people to do people stuff as long
But
as like
certain
the
people can
people
stay
stuff
out of it.
isn't getting tainted with like those icky people that we don't like.
Hmm. Yep. And it's the same. It's the same on the American side with Trump getting rid of. Well, I only recognize two genders. Why is that a problem? And it does directly tie into political values because they're being pushed by a freaking leader of a country and being Canadian and American. I'm not saying specifically American. Both of
Right.
us are doing it. The reality is, they're your voters. They're human beings. They have feelings. Unless, like I made comments to in past episodes, unless you're having a physical relationship with a person, and I am talking sexual, even if it's just touching, feely, lovey-dovey relationship, not like hardcore sex, it's none of your fucking business. Just be happy they voted for you. You buy your package of meat, they'll buy their package of meat. You go home and have a barbecue. You'll go barbecue with your friends, you'll go barbecue with your friends. Quit putting the fence up. People are getting hurt trying to jump those fences, and all you're doing is causing a bigger political rift. I'm so done with hatred, almost as much as I'm done with liberals or labels, liberals.
Hmm. No, it's like I find this whole thing kind of like, I don't know. Interesting is an understatement, but I mean, like as far as like Trump's statement about how he only recognizes two genders, that comment, that mindset in and of itself, I don't necessarily have a problem with it. That's all you recognize. Well, you're a fucking dinosaur. I don't expect you to be a progressive thinker. Like I get that. If that is your personal opinion, you're welcome to it. I don't give a fuck. But when that becomes your presidential opinion, that changes the nature of the conversation. And the problem for me isn't in what kind of like a mindset this guy occupies. It's in what kind of actions he takes that are motivated by that mindset. Like, I don't want to um, name the wrong past prime minister. I'm wanting to think it was Stephen Harper, like here in Canada. But when he was running for election the first time, there was a lot of people that were really, really pushing him to comment on abortion, like as far as what his views were and what his plans were should he become elected prime minister. And I liked the way he addressed it at the time because he said, look, like my personal feeling is I feel a strong distaste towards abortion. I wish it didn't have to happen. But if I'm elected, my job is to represent all Canadians, not just the ones that agree with me. And I'm going to leave social issues for social discussions. I don't see this as the stuff of politics effectively.
Mhm.
And that was a position I could very, very much respect. I mean, if Trump were to approach the gender conversation the same way, saying, "Look, I got a lot of like really radical ideas about the way things are, but I'm not going to let that taint my role as the president." I think, well, you're like not a person I agree with, but I can respect the fact that you can draw a line between you and your job.
Right.
Sadly, that's not what's happening anymore.
On either side of the fence.
On
Yep.
either, look, absolutely.
Yep.
I'm guilty of it myself, and I'm willing to own that.
Mhm. We were absolute pieces of shit in the past about it. Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
some people's view, we probably still are,
Yeah, maybe.
but we won't know about it because we're not talking to them anymore. So, anyways, I feel like we could go on about this like endlessly because this is obviously like a very, very passionate conversation.
Mhm.
I
Yes.
don't know how much fresh territory we're going to cover right now. I don't know if you got a different view of things.
Not really. I think we're coming to a head until something. I think in society right now we're on a cusp, and if we delve any further, we're going to be talking out our asses
Hmm.
because we're being at that cusp. Either something's going to go extremely right, or something's going to go extremely wrong, and then
Oh,
there's going to be political uprisings, and there's going to be more personal conflict between people. I just wish we could all find a way to talk about it and not we don't even have to agree, but let's just allow our disagreements to be what they are and try to focus on what you used to focus on all the time or still focus on all the time, the things we have in common more so than the things we have apart. Apart. Yeah. No. You know
you
what
had
I
it
mean.
right the first time.
Okay. Sorry out there.
Okay, well then for today, let's just put a pin in it. I mean, we'll probably be revisiting this subject matter because we asked a lot of questions. I don't know if we really came up with a lot of answers.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody wants to weigh in the comments, feel free to do so or send us an email in thebloodpod@gmail.com. We're definitely interested in hearing your perspectives on this.
And we love doing response videos.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
And just so I don't forget, please remember to hit like and click on the notification bell so that you can be aware of when new content comes out. Because every once in a while, our schedule gets a bit irregular. Don't
Right.
want you to miss out on something that you might otherwise like. If you got ideas for things you would like us to speak about in the future, we welcome that input. We really welcome any kind of input. This
Mhm.
show isn't about Jason and I talking. We can do that on the telephone. We don't need to do it on a podcast. We're trying to do this for all of you.
And so
So
we
it,
can broaden our horizons as well.
mm-hmm.
But if you
So
got an idea, or you know what, and I know we keep saying this and trying to drive it into the ground, but if you want to be part of the solution, send us an IM and we'll get you on our show and talk with us. You don't have to be somebody like way out there and think, oh, they never want to talk about me. They never want to talk with me because my ideas are like just small little things. We want to talk to everybody. So send us an email. Ask us your questions if you want a response. Let us know. Hey, you know what? Like I saw this episode 3 days ago from 2 years ago, and I think this side, you guys can revisit this. Can I be a part of this conversation? Absolutely, 100%. Because we're interacting, we are strengthening bonds by you coming on and talking with us. We've had a couple guests in the past that way. Amber, great conversations. There's a couple different episodes with her in it. Watch them. We didn't know her from a hole in the ground, but now we do, and we're best friends. So come on, be our friend. Here's my hand.
Okay, guys, and yeah, I understand. Obviously, I think it's come through loud and clear today from everything that Jason and I have said. We understand we're living in a divided world. We don't want the world to be quite so divided. We'd like to figure out how to get back to finding that common ground. We'd like to get back to taking the strain off of our platonic relationships. We'd like to get back to not letting external influences crush us under their own weight. I want you to remember that as much as I'm not sure of the way forward right now, maybe Jason's not sure of the way forward, I'm confident that there is a way forward. We will find it together one way or another.
Yes, we will.
Maybe we don't have the answers today, but we will find them together. And until next time, when we continue the conversation, my friends, one love.